So here we are in the interactive image tutorial, and in this example we're going to pick up where we left off after creating the selection around the hat. So by now you've either used the bitmap method or the vector method to create your selection, and now we're ready to go ahead and program these buttons in Fireworks so that we can swap out each of these colored hats when the appropriate colored button is rolled over. Go ahead and close out of that. Here's our starting image. What we have here is a background image, turn off the hat, of our starting image with a couple rectangles that we just used to create a border effect on it. And we also have one of our colored hats from the vector mask example, and this is it right here in the green. So if you were working with the bitmap selection now, you would have your bitmap hat. We don't need all three hats like we created the first time. We only need to work with one of these. So if you finished up from the previous tutorial and you have three layers, green hat, red hat, and blue hat, delete two of the three. It doesn't really matter which one you start with, but just to go ahead and delete those. The first thing we want to do now is actually duplicate the frame. In the previous example, we duplicated the layer so that we could see the hats on the layers and just preview it manually. But in this example, we're going to preview it, duplicate the frames to preview them off of the frame. Click on the little drop-down menu and choose Duplicate Frame, and we'll choose 3 times. So now we have the same image, the same everything on all 3 frames. Go ahead and just click on frame 2, and we'll call this red hat frame. And then we'll click on the next one, green hat frame, and then frame 4, blue hat. And all we're going to do now is change the hue and saturation of each of these colored hats for the frames, just like we did for the layers, but we're working on frames now. Frame 1, we can actually delete this. Just click delete to delete the masking image so that we're just working with our starting image. This is the default image, and then when we roll over each of the buttons, we're going to target each of these different frames. So in the red frame, bring that up. The red hat frame, select your image, and in the Properties Inspector, you should see a hue saturation already set up. Double click it, and let's go ahead and drag the hue all the way over so we get the red. Click OK. Click on the green hat, and that'll be okay because that's how we initially created it, and we'll just keep green on green. Click on the blue, select the image, hue saturation, and drag it over for blue. There we go. And again, let's just go over what's going to happen here. We have frame 1, which is by default the image after we publish it. Roll over one of these buttons. Say we roll over the red hat, targets the red frame. Roll over the green hat, targets the green frame and the blue frame. So that's essentially what we're going to work with. Let's go ahead now and create our buttons. So if I control tab over here, we have our button start. And it's just a couple of images, bitmaps, flattened on their own layer. And we're going to convert these to buttons right now. Right-click on the first image and choose Convert to Symbol. Symbol's a button. Don't have to worry about giving it a fancy name. Click OK. Let's do the same thing for the next button. Convert to Symbol, button, OK. And for the third one, we'll go out on a limb and get crazy and use the shortcut key F8, just like in Flash. Click button and OK. 3 buttons, nothing's going on. If I preview them, oops, no overstate. OK. Double click them and brings up the button editor. I move that over. Not much room on the screen right here. I'll just turn that off. Click on the overstate, copy up graphic. And here's our graphic. I have to bring it back. Okay, turn off my layers, turn off my frames. Here's the drop shadow that we have applied to it. Double click it, and we're just going to make a modification to the drop shadow so that we can get some visual feedback when we roll over them. Here's the upstate with the normal drop shadow. On the overstate, here is the new drop shadow, just to give us some feedback. Let's go ahead and close out of that. Double click on the slice for the next button, click on the overstate, copy up graphic. There is a little done button down here. could see that. We're just not really seeing everything. Closing out of these windows is the same thing. I just want to point that out. We're just working with such limited real estate here. There we go. Maybe if I can just work like that. On the edit, on the overstate, edit graphic, edit the drop shadow. Just something to make it look different. There we go. Click done, or just click exit on the window, either way. Double click it again, overstate, copy up graphic, edit the drop shadow, 130 and 3. Okay, up, over, done. And if I preview these now, there we go. Looks great. You can turn off the slices by just clicking on the hide slices button. Now we can preview each of these, what they would look like. It's great. Select all 3 of them. Control C to copy. Don't need that one. And let's see if we can reposition everything here again. So now we have our background image. We have our green hat layer. We don't want to get rid of that because on each, even though there's nothing on it on this frame, there certainly is on the other frames. So don't see that and think that's an empty layer, and you can go ahead and delete it because it does contain all the information for the rest of the frames. Let's go ahead and just create a new layer. We'll call this buttons. Make sure that you are on frame 1 at this point. This will cause some problems if you're not. Control V on the button layer at frame 1 to paste the buttons. Go ahead and turn those slices off again. And let's position these in the same order they are in the frames. So red will go on top. Undo that. Let's lock my background. Red goes on top, green in the middle, and blue down here. Now let's go ahead and just arrange them, even though we could do that later. So window, align to the left, align vertically. There we go. Click on preview. Nothing's happening, of course, because we haven't told it to do anything, but the buttons look like they're rolling over nicely. Go back to original. Still on frame 1. Let's go ahead and create a slice over this hat right here. So go ahead and click on the slice tool. There we go. Should be big enough. And now we're ready to program the buttons. Click on this first one and grab this little middle handle part and drag over. And look how easy this is. Swap image from the red hat, and that's exactly what we want to do because the red hat is up top. Click on more options. By default, preload images and restore image on mouse out are selected, and that's exactly what we want. What's nice about putting these in the same order, the buttons in the same order as the frames, is that if we didn't have these named, we can see that this is the second button, second layer, second frame, go into the second frame, and so on. We click on the next button, go to 3, and go on the last one for 4. By default, Fireworks automatically creates this extra layer, and that's for the swap image, basically. So if we click on red hat, we'll see that we still have the buttons, but click on these, and there are no buttons, at least not, you don't see them unless we had different states, but they're still there. So we're working on this. We just swapped this out to red hat frame. Go ahead and click on the next one, click and drag. This time we want to select the green hat because this is the green button. Okay. Click on the handle, drag it over. Blue hat, frame 4. Okay. Everything should be good. I don't think we forgot anything. Turn off our slices, give it a preview, and see what happens. Hey, there's the red, the green, and the blue. Nicely set up. And that's all there is to it. Of course, we could assign a link to each of these buttons if we needed to, but this example was just a rollover example to preview the woman in each of the different colored hats. So I hope this was helpful. We'll go ahead and export this in the next lesson just so you can see how to get this to an HTML page. But that's all there is to it. Just remember to, once you have your hat selected in this type of example, you don't want to duplicate the layers. You want to duplicate the frames. Put a different colored hat on each frame, and that's all there is to it. And just target that particular frame for each of the colored buttons.